Raymond Cole lived in a world built from marble, glass, and excess. His estate stretched for acres, perched on a hillside with a view of the ocean that glittered like a jewel under the midday sun. To most who knew him, he was not simply a businessman but a king who ruled with money. Hotels, casinos, golf courses, his empire sprawled across continents, and his influence reached beyond boardrooms into the highest social circles. Yet, despite his age and graying temples, his habits were those of a man who refused to grow old. One of those habits was notorious. He gave out unlimited cards to women he favored, little black keys to a vault that never emptied. 4 of those women lounged by his pool that afternoon, basking in the warmth of privilege. Their laughter carried across the gardens, sharp and hollow, layered with the clinking of champagne glasses. They were not wives, nor long-term partners, they were ornaments in his orbit, young and polished, hungry for attention as much as for diamonds. Each woman possessed one of his fabled cards, a rectangle of power with no restrictions. They swiped them carelessly, buying gowns, private jets, or even islands of their own choosing, then boasted about their latest indulgences to anyone willing to listen. To them, the cards were trophies, proof of their place in his life. To Raymond, they were tools of control, leashes draped in velvet. He enjoyed watching them compete for his favor, parading their extravagant purchases before him as if their worth could be measured by the size of a diamond or the exclusivity of a brand. It amused him, kept him entertained in the twilight of his life, and fueled the gossip that surrounded his name. Inside the mansion, away from the spectacle, Maria moved quietly through the halls. She was in her 40s, her hair tied back, her uniform plain and unremarkable. Years of service had taught her the art of invisibility. She carried trays, polished counters, swept marble floors, and ensured that the indulgent lifestyle of her employer and his companions flowed without interruption. The women rarely acknowledged her beyond snapping their fingers or barking small orders. She was background noise, an extension of the furniture. But Maria saw everything. She noticed the packages arriving in droves, boxes of designer shoes, racks of gowns still with their tags, crates of imported wine. She noticed the way receipts were left scattered across the kitchen counter, amounts so large they could have fed a neighborhood for months. She noticed the cards themselves, resting carelessly in handbags or tossed onto tables, as though they were nothing more than trinkets. She had once struggled to buy bread for her family, and now she stood in a house where wealth was wasted like spilled water. Her heart hardened each time she carried empty boxes to the bins, knowing children not far from her own neighborhood went hungry while these women discarded silk scarves after a single wear. Sometimes, she lingered just a moment longer when she wiped the tables, her eyes falling on the sleek black cards. The shine of them called to her, whispering possibilities. She thought of her son, who had given up his dream of university because tuition was out of reach. She thought of her sister, whose hospital bills grew heavier every day. She thought of the orphanage nearby, where children slept on thin mats with empty stomachs. She told herself it was not her place, that she was a maid and nothing more. Yet, as she listened to the women by the pool, bragging about purses worth more than houses, she felt a quiet fire kindle inside her. She said nothing, but in the silence of her thoughts, a question repeated itself: why should power lie wasted in careless hands when it could change lives? The seed of an idea had been planted, though she dared not yet admit it, not even to herself. The days that followed seemed to blur into a parade of indulgence. The 4 women, each armed with their limitless cards, treated the world as their private marketplace. Their rivalry grew sharper, almost theatrical, as each tried to outshine the others with extravagant purchases. One arrived back from Paris carrying a single velvet box that contained a diamond-studded watch so rare it could have bought an entire city block. Another returned from Milan with a gown worth more than most people's lifetime savings, only to wear it once for a dinner party before discarding it in the back of a closet. A third flew to Dubai just for a day, swiping the card for a gold-plated car accessory she did not even need. Their conversations became competitions, a cycle of bragging that left Raymond amused, sipping his whiskey while they paraded their treasures before him. But while his companions drowned themselves in greed, Maria's sharp eyes noticed something they never cared to see. The cards weren't restricted to luxury stores or jet charters, they worked everywhere. To the women, the thought of using such power for anything ordinary was beneath them. To Maria, that was where the possibility lived. One morning, while tidying the sitting room, she noticed one of the cards left casually on the table beside a half-finished glass of champagne. Her breath caught For several minutes, she stared at it, her hands trembling as she dusted the nearby surface. The women had gone to the spa, and the house was silent. Slowly, she slid the card into her apron pocket, her heart hammering like a drum. That afternoon, she had errands to run for the house. Normally, she paid for cleaning supplies with the allowance she was given, a strict budget she had learned to stretch. This time, when she reached the register at the store, she held out the black card with shaking fingers. The cashier swiped it without hesitation. Approved. No questions asked. Maria nearly dropped the bags as she left, her heart racing faster than it had in years. Back at the mansion, she slipped the card onto the same table before anyone returned, her face calm though her blood pulsed with adrenaline. That night, sleep evaded her. She lay awake on her narrow bed in the servants' quarters, staring at the ceiling. Images flooded her mind. Her son, sitting at the kitchen table, his acceptance letter to university folded in his hands, the dream denied because of money. Her sister, pale in a hospital bed, waiting on bills that kept piling up. The children at the orphanage, curled on thin mats, whispering themselves to sleep with empty stomachs. All the people she loved, all the faces she couldn't forget, swam before her eyes. The next day, Maria made a decision. When one of the women tossed her card onto a counter before heading out to the garden, Maria slipped it quietly into her pocket. This time, she didn't go for cleaning supplies. She went to a supermarket and filled her cart to the brim with rice, beans, flour, milk, and fruit. She added boxes of children's clothes, medicine, even simple toys. The cashier didn't blink at the mountain of items. The card cleared instantly, no limit touched. Maria drove the supplies herself to the orphanage that evening, her hands steady on the wheel. The children's faces lit up as they saw the bags, their small hands clutching bread, their eyes wide at the sight of toys and new clothes. The headmistress wept with gratitude, asking who had done this. Maria said nothing. She slipped away quietly, her chest full of a strange, burning pride she had never felt before. For the first time in years, Maria didn't feel invisible. She didn't feel like a maid carrying trays or sweeping marble floors. She felt powerful, not because of the card itself, but because of what she chose to do with it. She told herself it would only be once, that she had satisfied her conscience. But deep inside, she already knew the truth, this was only the beginning. Weeks slipped by, and the rhythm of Maria's secret life grew steadier, more daring. She had perfected her routine. A card slipped from a careless handbag, a trip into the city under the guise of errands, and a quiet delivery to those who needed it most. Each journey added another layer of hope to her community. Groceries arrived in neighborhoods that had been hungry for months. Hospitals received boxes of medicines and equipment they could never have afforded. At the orphanage, the children slept on new beds with warm blankets, their laughter ringing in the air like music. Word spread quickly about a mysterious benefactor, a guardian angel, who was changing lives. Maria never confessed her role, but each time she saw joy replace despair, she carried the secret in her heart like a crown. Inside Raymond's mansion, however, cracks began to form. The four women had grown restless. Their rivalry, once playful, turned venomous. Accusations flew across the glittering dining table. "You're draining more than the rest of us. I saw charges on the statements that don't match your style. Who buys boxes of rice with a card like this?" Their suspicion sharpened with every new delivery that appeared in the statements: bulk purchases, hospital pharmacies, school supplies. These were not the indulgences of wealthy women, and none of them could fathom wasting a swipe on something so ordinary. Raymond, at first amused, grew irritated. He didn't mind footing the bill for diamonds and jets, but the mystery of charity charges unsettled him. He was a man who demanded control, and control was slipping. One evening, he called them all into the great dining hall. The long table gleamed under crystal chandeliers, glasses of wine untouched as tension filled the air. The four women sat stiffly, glaring at one another, their jeweled hands tapping impatiently. Maria stood at her usual place, silent, pouring drinks and adjusting plates, trying to calm the storm inside her chest. Raymond slammed a folder of bank statements onto the table. "Which one of you thinks it's amusing to turn my generosity into a charity fund?" His voice cut like steel, sharp and cold. "Do you take me for a fool? Supermarkets, clinics, children's clothes, this isn't your style. So, who is it?" The women gasped and pointed fingers, but none confessed. Their silence stretched until it became unbearable. Maria, her heart pounding, knew the moment she had dreaded had arrived. She set down the tray in her hands and stepped forward. Her voice trembled at first but grew stronger as she spoke. It was me. The room froze. 4 pairs of eyes widened in shock, their mouths open with disbelief. Raymond turned slowly, his expression unreadable. You, he scoffed. A maid. Maria lifted her chin. Yes, I used your cards. Not for myself, not for luxuries. For the hungry, for the sick, for children with nothing. While they buy trinkets worth more than homes, I gave what you waste to people who need it more than you will ever understand. A heavy silence followed. The women whispered among themselves, scandalized. Raymond's stare drilled into her, a mixture of anger and something else, something softer. Finally, he let out a low laugh, a sound that startled everyone. You stole from me, he said. I gave meaning to what you wasted, Maria replied, steady now, her voice ringing with quiet defiance. The tension hung thick in the air. Then, to everyone's astonishment, Raymond poured himself a drink, walked to her, and pressed one of the cards into her hand. Keep it, he said. But don't use it for them, he gestured at the women, their faces pale with outrage. Use it for the world you've already started to change. Maria stood there, the card heavy in her palm, her heart soaring. For the first time in her life, she was no longer invisible. In that grand hall, beneath the stunned silence of the others, she had become the most powerful person in the room, not because of wealth, but because she dared to give it away.